fact, that was.
No more room in hell. The dead will walk here.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to Three Corners of Horror on Horror Fiend TV. Tonight, it's two of the brothers. We're down one. We needed to give him a night off. He does a lot of work, so we wanted to give him a night off. But I am Joe, the psychologist, and this is my brother JR. You ready to revisit one from when we were younger?
Yes, we'll see if the magic still holds or is just a long forgotten spell.
Ooh, nice. I mean, yeah, it's when I watched this, it was just like, oh no. Well, guys, this is going to be a first in what you're going to see actually throughout the year. We've got a lot of anniversaries coming up in horror. I mean, we're going even back 50 years ago, so keep an eye out for those. And tonight we're going to be discussing the 1989 movie Warlock. It is directed by Steve Miner, who has directed Friday the 13th, Part 2 and 3, as well as Halloween H2O. Written by David Tohey, and guess what, JR? He wrote Pitch Black.
Nice.
And the movie stars Julian Sands as Warlock, Laurie Singer as Cassandra with a K, and Richard E. Grant as Giles Redfern. All right, so if you have not seen this movie, what is it about? Well, we start back in the 17th century, and there is where we're introduced to a shackled warlock who I'm assuming is going to be put to death from the looks of it. They don't really say. We knew he was going to be committed for his crimes. He does witchcraft. And Redfern shows up. He's the one that captured him. And before they can put him to death, he ends up in the 80s. What a horrible time for him to have ended up. So, as I said, the movie stars Julian Sands. And, JR, what do you think of Julian Sands as the warlock?
When we first watched this film, I know we were just talking about a couple minutes ago. We having not watched it this long. When you go back, you're like, okay, all right, yeah. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, Julian Sands is a tremendous actor, but you could almost tell going back to watch it that this was probably his first horror movie because it sure felt that way. But I mean, I think for me, he needed to be a little bit more sarcastic going back and seeing it now again. But it was, I mean, don't get me wrong, we talked about this all the time. You cannot fault sometimes the actors for the script they're given and they work what they were given. And you could tell that he worked what was given. I mean, he has some scenes where he did look the charisma and the menacing persona came out. Like the one scene of the whole film for me where I think it really, really showed was when he goes to the swings and he's talking to the kid about, why you're out here, how come you're not in church? Oh, I'm going to church. And then, the kid starts, he says, that he has powers, and he goes, "Oh, you can't be a witch is women." And he goes, "That had this whole conversation." And then when you find out what he does with the kid, you're like, "All right, that's kind of messed up." But that was like the one specific scene I think where if they would have had more of that throughout the film, I think it would have really showed, the kind of actor he is. And but yeah, it was he did what he needed to do for the script. I know me and you talked too about how was the sequel. I don't remember the sequel too well, but hopefully, what, I think I'm gonna go back to watch it just to see if his character developed a little bit more in the sequel. But yeah, it was yeah. I mean, like the first time we did watch, you were like, wow. Now you're like,
Yeah. I mean, because it had been years. I mean, I can't even tell you how long it's been since I've seen the movie. And I recalled it being a bit more scarier and, the warlock himself being more menacing. And then I'm watching it and sometimes I felt like he's just walking through the scene. He wasn't as scary. He wasn't as menacing. And I like, he's in Arachnophobia. I mean, he's a great actor. And as you said, probably with what he was given to go, to work with, not just that, we're talking about the 80s, and
Yeah.
80s didn't necessarily always have the best scripts. But yeah, for me, as I'm watching it, I was like, oh wow. So yeah, not as scary as I thought it was gonna be. And in the end, rewatching the movie, um, it didn't, for lack of a better word, have that magic
Yeah.
that it had when it put the spell on me back in 1989. Now, unfortunately, it didn't age well.
Mm.
Um, you know, it- we've talked about other movies that have come around this time that had great special effects, practical, even with what was considered CGI and that little tornado. I couldn't help but
No,
laugh.
no, no.
I was like, "Oh wow!" I'm like, really? I'm like, I didn't remember it was that bad how he teleported. And the movie, it could have had, I guess back then it was better. Now it's just not going to hold up.
No.
The he's out trying to find the devil's Bible so he can utter God's actual name and put the end of the world. Like that's a great storyline to have. We're also talking about Warlock, and there was a real lack of magic spells in here. And again, it goes to show you how your memory thinks and remembers movies a certain way. I was thinking there was going to be a lot more magic in it, and there really wasn't.
No.
Aside a couple of cool spells that he did, but if I'm watching a movie about witchcraft, there's got to be more witchcraft in it. And so that's where I wasn't, just as the movie kept going. It started off good, when he goes after her friend, Chaz,
Yeah.
and then with the psychic, and then it dragged for like an hour, went into the unfortunate where they try to put the comedy in horror back in the days, and Laurie Singer like did not help this movie at all.
No.
Unfortunately, on the rewatch, at all, she was terrible. Um, yeah, I mean, it sucks because when we were talking about all the movies we're gonna do for this year, I'm sitting here like, all right, Warlock, and then I'm like, oh no, the rest ones are gonna get better, guys. We promise. But I mean, we might be saving you from watching it, or if you've seen the movie recently and have the same reactions we're having to it now, let us know. What about you, Jr.? Like, what are your thoughts on the movie now?
I think, and I'll mention it later, the other movies that came out this year and how it compares to Warlock. But yeah, Cassandra with a K, that character just killed me with a K. I mean, I wasn't a big fan of her at all. I thought she was very flat in her role. I just, you know, when you have a female character sometimes in these roles where she's the supporting cast, but same time she has some of the lead, they usually captivate you a little bit more. There was nothing captivating about her character. Like,
It was annoying.
yeah, when she got old, you were kind of hoping, like, all right, just let her shrivel up and just keep going because the only reason you're using her is because she could drive. But it was just like, yeah, and then one scene just killed me. I mean, I'm sitting there like, oh my god, I didn't remember this scene was in this movie where you got the cop on the highway at night and his freaking speedometer goes off. And who's Julian Sand in one of the worst CGI things I've ever seen? Just whew, and he's
It,
just
it
in that one position. I'm like, oh my
yeah.
god, no, they didn't do that. I was like, oh, that right there completely made me remember how bad some of this stuff was in '89 compared to now, of course. But when I tell you some of the films that came out in '89, you'll wonder why the CGI wasn't the same. But yeah, I mean, even like the magic spells, it just didn't look very like. I mean, the best magic spell he had was when they were trying to put the constraints on him, and he looked at the Amish guy in the face, and they're looking at each other, and his eyes started.
Yeah.
That was a cool. I was like, why couldn't you have more of that in this film? I mean, and you had another scene where he tells him go follow him and grab nails and just, which I thought that was very cool that you're stabbing the imprint of his foot.
That was pretty fucking awesome. Like, I
But
like that also.
yeah, but the way they did it, like there was no blood coming out of his feet. I mean, even had that blood coming out of his feet when she stabbed the imprint of his head. I mean, that would have been nice. Have it's
Yeah.
just like little things that I felt like they forgot to do in order to, like you said, throw a little bit of comedy into it. That which now that's another funny thing is that in that scene, the train starts taking off because he's in one of the carts
Passed
and
out.
passed out, and she's old and shriveled, and she's catching up to the train. You're like, what the? Did they forget she was old?
I know.
I mean,
And she fell. She fell
yeah.
too. And at 60 years old, hitting gravel like that, you probably
Oh
wouldn't
my
have gotten
God.
up as fast. Yeah, that was unfortunately. Ooh.
That was
Well, I
brutal.
mean, so we keep discussing on how they could improve it if they remake this. Like if now we have much better camera work, people who can do much better CGI, even practical. If they remake this, like who would you want to see cast? And what little things would you change or improve actually to make because I would like to see we get a lot of witch ones, and I think on one of our live streams we discussed this. There's very little, which is why we brought this movie up, because we remembered it fondly back then. But it would be good to see a warlock, see a guy doing magic besides, in the Lord of the Rings. Anyone off the top of your head who you think would be good playing the warlock role, and what would you do to make the movie better?
Oh, I got the whole cast. I
Oh,
have
do
the whole
you?
cast and director. This is definitely the same Raimi written all over it.
That's a good call.
Sam Raimi, Tom Hiddleston as the warlock, very charismatic. He would pull it off. I mean, granted, yes, people would be like, "Oh, look, it's Loki." He would pull it off as the warlock. I would put Margot Robbie as the female character, the female lead. Then to play the hunter would be Travis Fimmel. That right there is an interesting cast because they could all stand on their own, and putting them together, I think would be great. Now, as far as what I would change, you have this book that's supposed to play such an importance in this film. Give more background on the book.
Yep.
I would not do this film as a one. I would do it like maybe like either a two-part or a trilogy, because there you could get more in depth with the characters. You could
With
get more.
each part that he has to gather.
Yes, because you knew he was a warlock. You don't know what made him a warlock. I know we talk about vagueness, but the fact that the main character, the villain, is so vague, you don't know what drove him to be a warlock, what led him there, which I think gives you something to open up. And then exactly what did he do to the wife to make this guy become a warlock hunter?
Yeah.
There's a lot of so many plot holes in this movie that if they take their time with it, and you can actually make it a trilogy and pull it off. Because you could, the first one is basically you get background on the warlock. The second one, you could give the why this guy is going after him with pure revenge, and then focus the third film about a little bit more in depth with the book. Because I mean, it is an interesting concept. You say the name of God backwards in order to
Undo everything.
undo everything, which is awesome. That's such a great concept, and unfortunately, it felt so flat in this film because
Yep.
they didn't really dive into it too much. And I'm sure the budget at this time and the fact that they were just putting a movie together, but you did have great scenery in this film. You had a lot of different. I mean, the fact that they could go on a plane and this dude's in a freaking cargo. you had
Mind
a
you,
lot.
making fire.
Yes,
That was
make
the
it
other
fire.
part. Inside a plane, like I don't know, like when the plane blow up or something. I mean, I
Or
could
a
be
smoke
wrong.
detector
But
go off.
yeah, something.
Yeah, there was just too many. I mean, I know in horror it's supposed to like not be too
Suspend
much,
disbelief.
with reality. But yeah, it was disbelief. But yeah, this is some things you're like, yeah, no, But yeah, I think that's who I would cast, and I think that's what I would change. Definitely make it a trilogy because you go more in depth with it, and this is a character that you can honestly create a franchise with.
All right. See, I have two for him for Warlock because I was going young and then I was also going older. So if let's say they wanted to cast a younger one, Robert Pattinson. If they wanted to go older, Colin Farrell. Those are with those like when I thought of Warlock, both we seen Colin can do a vampire, so and he has that menacing. Same thing with Pattinson. For the female, I was already stuck on Anya Taylor Joy. I mean, she would have been great because one of the other things hinted in the movie was that a white witch or a good witch was going to take him out, which kind of hinted that Cassandra had some type of magic.
Yeah,
Anya would be great for the role. And oddly enough, because it's just somebody I've been stuck with for, and I need to see him in some type of movie. John Hamm. I would want John Hamm to play Giles. That would
there's
be my cast.
see, there's another guy I think that could pull off Warlock, and no disrespect, Tom, I love your Loki, but Lee Pace. Do you know who he is?
Oh fuck yeah!
Lee Pace
Lee
as the
Pace is
Warlock
another good choice.
because
Yeah,
he's tall, he has the presence, and the way he does his acting and his voice. Yeah, I think he's another guy who can pull it off pretty good.
yeah. I would get behind that, but I definitely would want to see more black magic.
Yes.
You know, get the backstory on Giles, the wife, and Warlock. You know why they hate each other because you said the movie had a lot of vagueness. You knew he did something, but he wouldn't go into it. But in a trilogy sense, you would get all that.
Mhm.
So the trilogy would be great also. But it's just yeah, just dive more into the world of witchcraft itself.
Yeah.
Make it more horror. Do not put any comedy in unless you want to throw something here and there. Other than that, just give us a good dark, you know, warlock movie. Like that's what I totally would want to see. The people we mentioned, I think, would be all great. So, I mean, it's definitely one that should get remade. That we
Yeah.
talk about some leave alone. Let's wipe, no disrespect to Julian, but let's start fresh with another one, and get this one remade. I mean,
Yeah.
I love witchcraft movies. I mean, there's because they have so much they can do with it, with the fact with spells.
Yeah.
They don't have to keep repeating the same things we see. There's a lot that could be done with witchcraft. All right. Well, I mean, even though we're doing the old ones, we're still going to be rating them. So, any last thoughts? Actually, you were hinting. So now I'm curious because you were mentioning other movies that came out during this time. So let me know what those are in the closing thoughts because I'm kind of like in my head. I'm like, oh, what are they? But yeah, closing thoughts, rate.
All right. This one, I'll be honest, going back to watching it, yeah, I had a hard. I had a hard time focusing on the film. The interesting scenes for me were when they went to the Amish guys, home. I thought they could have lingered a little bit longer there. It just felt like, yeah, it was just tough. I'm sitting there like, wow, the special effects are not the greatest. Now, if you look at the special effects of the rest of the films that came out in 1989, you would sit there and be like, yeah, you guys could have did better with your CGI. We had Shocker, we had Leviathan,
Oh,
Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, Intruder, Deep Star 6, Friday the 13th 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers, Pet Cemetery, Puppet Master, Sleepaway Camp 3. We even had Swamp Thing come out.
damn. Oh yeah,
And talk about CGI, The Abyss. I know The Abyss had a massive, budget, but
but
still.
yeah,
And I think this is the reason why Warlock gets lost in the shuffle
Yeah.
because, and that's just half of the movies. There's a lot more movies that came out '89, which was a great year for horror for those times. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't stand the test of time. Um, the acting was like, the plot holes kind of like messed up the movie a little bit more. Yeah, and it's a shame because this movie had a lot of potential. I mean, they had the second one, and I see the second film. I'm sure most likely it's better than the first. But for me, I'm gonna give it a generous 3, only because we do got to do it by its time, and compared to the rest of those movies, it's not. It doesn't really stand up to the rest of those films at all.
No.
But I'll just give it a modest 3.
All right. Yeah, again, I'm sure when Rick watches the episode, he's gonna go, because he never saw the movie. So he's probably going, thank God I didn't see this movie. So we spared you, bro. We spared you.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, did not stand test of time. With the list that you just mentioned, definitely shows that, either they did not have a whole lot of money, but it's kind of strange because of who the director and writer are. Now, those were their later works. So this was, maybe their jumping point. I was going to go right in the middle. So I'm going 2.5. A lot of it more is because, Julian, but it just, and it was long.
It was very
That's
long.
the other part. It was long. And at times I found it a little boring. So, we're talking about a horror movie with witchcraft that went on long and boring. Now, I know The Witch, was a
I
slow
love The
burn.
Witch.
It's a total different thing,
Yeah.
though. I mean, at least in that one, you got to see a little bit more of magic as opposed to what you saw here. So, yeah, it's unfortunate. It would have been great to sit here and talk about how great this movie is, and it can't be redone, but here we are, and it needs to be redone.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So with that, if you heard that list, keep an eye out because some of those will be coming up on here, believe it or not.
Mhm.
And make sure to, subscribe if you have not. Hit that follow for updates. We are spitting out a whole bunch of stuff this month for you guys. We definitely are even going to have extra 3/4 of horror episode coming up next month. So, guys, thank you for joining us. JR, thanks for going down memory lane. And, both of us,
Like a
let's just,
nightmare lane.
I was going to say, let's just wipe it now and forget all about it. Sorry, Julian.
Sorry,
And
buddy.
guys, until next time, ta-ta for now.